Hello, 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 and welcome back to That Quirky Bird Girl. I'm your host, Steph, and today I am joined by the lovely Monica, and I'd love for you to just take a second to start introducing.
Quick interlude with me and my food. I have perfectly and so beautifully placed Minnesotan birds all throughout this video. And if you're listening to the podcast and you're not watching the video, don't you dare worry because I uploaded the video over to YouTube. Now, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you already know that this video has been uploaded to YouTube. And if you're not, you're gonna want to subscribe because I've got some pretty big things going on over the next few weeks and we're gonna be cheers to it. Love you. Bye.
Yourself.
Sure. I'm Monica Bryan, she, her pronouns. And I identify as a Latina and lesbian and a active, crazy, nerdy birder.
Oh,
And
oh
I'm
my
from the Twin
gosh.
Cities, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Born and raised?
Born and raised. Yes.
And Monica, I love to ask a first intro question about what and why your favorite bird is.
Yes. My favorite bird is the cedar. No, I shouldn't say my favorite bird. The spark bird is the cedar waxwing. And it was some friends of mine took me out over 25 years ago. I was not a birder and they were. And on that day, I saw probably 60 species of birds. And the cedar waxwings that I saw were like, what are these? And it just opened up my world. And so that was my spark bird. Just made me realize that I was not paying attention to what was around me here.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad you could have that intro relationship. And you living in Minnesota, do you see Bohemian waxwings?
We do. So they come down in the winter. They come down to Duluth. And I've gotten to see 500 Bohemian waxwings at one time. Yes. Yes. Just
Oh my
fly.
goodness.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
That must be amazing.
It is. It is really amazing.
Well, Monica, we were just talking a little bit about Pride. So we're filming this through Pride Month. And I've talked a little bit about Pride identity here on my page and how it's sort of shaped really over the past few months and starting from the beginning of this year. So I was curious, what your journey with Pride and Pride celebration, Pride, um, queer joy, like what's that looked like for you?
I knew that I was gay when I was 16, 17, but back then you didn't come out. I mean, it was the era of Anita Bryant. I went to Catholic schools. So I hid for a long time and I don't know if that's one of the reasons why I became an accountant. I thought I was going to work in this little office and do the books for some little company. But I actually ended up in corporate America. And so I went into a company where there was 3,000 just in corporate headquarters and 10,000 worldwide. And I did accounting for a long time and I thought I was out, and didn't realize it. Pat Buchanan was spewing some hate. This is like 1991. And I just remember Oprah Winfrey, interviewing somebody and asking them about, well, what are you doing? And then I had to ask myself, what am I doing? Again, I thought I was out. I thought I had it, good. I was an accountant. I wasn't worried about anything. So I went to HR at my company and I said, hey, I'm gay. I want to support other gay employees and I want to help make things better here for our gay employees. And they were like, okay. So they put me together with another a gay gentleman and we ended up starting a gay and lesbian network support group in the company. And again, I thought I was out. I got interviewed by our local newspaper. So it was on, National Coming Out Day. I was, center page, front page, and I got a call from my sister and brother and my sister-in-law and brother, and they're like, hey, we read the story today about you. And I'm like, you guys knew. And they're like, well, and so I had to say like, wow, what was I doing? Like, what was I hiding? And so anyway, started the network. Um, we started with 10 folks. We ended up working with companies all over the Twin Cities. This is when we first started getting domestic partner benefits. And so, again, it just really changed my life in just being more out. And what happened was once I did that, so I was, promoting LGBT rights within the company and trying to change our systems from within. And um, I got hooked up with a foundation. It was Headwaters Foundation for Justice. So a gentleman that was working in community affairs of our company. He was at a foundation as a volunteer, and he said, "You should volunteer there." And so I said, "Okay, that sounds great." And so activists were interviewing me, and they said, "Well, what do you know about, systems change? You're in corporate." And I said, "Well, I'm trying to change the system from within." And they're like, "Okay." So they let me be a part of this. So I became a volunteer at Headwaters Foundation for Justice. They work on social, racial, economic, and environmental justice issues. It was amazing. I got to work with activists, and I was doing my LGBT activism around the Twin Cities. And from there, I was still doing accounting, but then I actually got promoted into the foundation of corporate of the St. Paul companies. And I got to do some great work. I got to meet amazing people. And then there was a downsizing that happened, and Headwaters had created a position the week before I got let go. And so they found out that I lost my job, and they said, "Well, we have a job." And I said, "I know, but you guys don't pay very much." But I had to say to myself, why can't I be a part of an organization that is doing amazing work? Um, and so from that point, I restructured how I was living my life. I went to Headwaters. I was there for 16 years. And again, I got to work and do work on LGBT rights, immigration rights, just be around amazing activists doing great work. And so I learned a lot. And one of the things that I would say about my LGBT work, even in corporate, because I was a Latina, it wasn't just about LGBT rights. It was about working for everybody and not just picking and choosing what you're going to work on. And so, whenever we would do talks, I would get to travel around to different companies around the country. I would always make sure that we would talk about equality for not only our LGBT community, but for the disability community, the African American community. So everybody was included in that work, and that's how I've continued my work at Headwaters, and it's what I bring into the work that I do today at the Urban Bird Collective.
So it's almost developed into one of your core values, really, is what it sounds like.
It really is. When so I started the Urban Bird Collective 6 years ago, and we had kind of looked at other organizations across the country, and there were some LGBT specific ones, and there were some, African American specific ones or BIPOC. And I just knew that we needed to do both. We needed to center both our BIPOC and LGBT QAI plus communities to do this work and to be inclusive. It just feels good.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you so much for doing that work as well. I this past weekend actually attended a speech. I gave a speech to the Autistic Adults NYC, and a lot of the people that were speaking, or my fellow speakers, were talking about the importance of pulling in people of color to the autistic movement as well. So I think, for me as someone who I am white, I'm Caucasian, um, I have to be honest, like pulling in other communities in my mind, I was like, we were naturally doing that, but I was wrong. I am so wrong. And I think that that's been made even clearer to me in meeting you and learning about just the impactful work that you're doing, but also the opinions that you're shaping and the change that you're making. I could imagine that if I were someone that was Black or Latina, um, that seeing someone create space when so many people that look like me might not be doing that in the way that we should be doing it. It's kind of it's reframed the way that I've thought about pride, and I've looked at the autistic acceptance movement. Is there any sort of advice that you could give, or any sort of um, thoughts that you have around like even expanding that mindset?
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but when I think about how to be inclusive, how to be more inclusive. So when I first started the Urban Bird Collective, when we say we want to center those two communities, the LGBT and BIPOC communities, I knew that we had to lift up the BIPOC community first, and that what was great about me starting this was, people always say, well, we need to be more inclusive, we need to diversify. But we started with it. We got to shape it. And so when I thought about our leaders, so the Urban Bird Collective, we do our work through, leaders. When I first started the Urban Bird Collective, we had 8 leaders. Majority were BIPOC. And then we had, I think, maybe 2 that were white lesbian. And so that was what I knew that we always had to do. We had to have the majority be BIPOC. And so from 8, today we're at 40. And I always look at the makeup of our leaders to again make sure that we're majority BIPOC. What I love to say is that we're majority BIPOC and majority LGBT, QAI plus. So pretty amazing. I think that, I've been around for a long time. I'm 64 years old. I've worked in many organizations and on boards, and we're always talking about diversity and inclusion. And it's all about creating that space, right? And building relationships. I think I've been successful in this work and in my jobs because of relationships. And I again weave that into everything that we do. My leaders, I want them to build relationships with each other. It's about building trust, so that we can do this work together, so that the people who are coming that we're inviting to these events, we have maybe 700-800 people who attend our events each year, um, that they feel included, that they feel welcomed, no matter who they are.
And do you get an opportunity much like after those sort of outings? Do you get an opportunity to engage with the attendees or ask them, what the space or how it felt like being in that community?
Yeah. So we'll send out surveys, every now and then to folks. I see repeat folks coming, and they
That's
always
the
tell
best
me,
feedback.
yeah, yes. And they always tell me, like, this is the best space ever. I always feel included, especially BIPOC folks. And so I love, as an ex accountant, I just love being around people. Um, One of the things that I've done this year is to really expand and reach out to volunteers, because people really want to be a part of what we're doing. And so that's been another great opportunity for me to get to know more people, um, talk to them about what their skills are, what they want to contribute to UBC, and then find a place for them to fit in. I we were able to work with an organization. We did a kayak training, and so I opened it up to our BIPOC and LGBT folks community, and we had a couple people register because it's a big time commitment, and they were amazing. And one of the BIPOC folks said, "I'm afraid of water, and I'm really, this is frightening for me, but I'm here because I trust you, and I want to be a part of this." So that was pretty cool.
Oh my goodness, Monica, that's so amazing. That's like the sweet awesome community that you're building. That must feel so honestly, like when you shared a little bit about your story going from someone who's working in corporate to now building a community. And I think the power in making a community feel safe for someone who doesn't look like you is like that it's a superpower what you've done.
I do feel that's my superpower when I ask people to be a part of things. I knew we were doing the right thing when those first 8 people that I brought together, they didn't know each other. I knew them. When they felt like, oh my God, what space am I in? So to have the 8 leaders feel that difference and then know that we were going to create it for others was was pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, it gives you like it sounds like hope.
Yes, yes. And it's hope and I try to be really optimistic, positive and realistic. And so we want to acknowledge where people are. So one, are they afraid of being outside because of who they are? Are they afraid of being outside because they're afraid of nature? There's those things. And so we acknowledge those and try to break down those barriers so that they can feel um, like being a part of this and feel, we changed the word from, safe and inclusive to welcoming and inclusive because safety is something that we couldn't guarantee, that we don't know what outside forces are going to, impact the work that we're doing. But we're continually working to make sure that we as leaders are prepared for situations, and are ready to make things as safe as possible for folks.
Mm. I'm, I'm curious, and I know we just jumped right into talking about Urban Bird Collective and sort of the mission, but that's kind of that's kind of how things usually go on my podcast. I am obsessed with missions and sort of organizations that have been able to inspire hope. I'm curious, as maybe over like the past 90 days, what has been sort of providing support or maybe even additional support to your community looked like?
One of the things that I have sort of always, when you talk about like, when I've talked about, being inclusive of the LGBT and BIPOC and melding those two. And I think that is the same thing that I've done as far as issue areas. So whether it's, my immigration, women's rights, LGBT rights, um, we have people, the leaders in our organization who are in community, who are working on these issues. When I look at the partnerships that we're working with, we're doing a walk this Wednesday with an organization that's working on immigration rights, and it's a natural partner for us. We want people to be in community, and so again, trying to create that welcoming and inclusive space and talking about immigration issues is really important. Um, I think the thing that we do are, we're just consistent. We continue to be there, um, and we also acknowledge the tough things that are going on, because we're all experiencing them. We're living those things, and we'll just continue that. I would say, one of the things that we're really trying to do is again gain more skills on how to be better prepared. So we'll continue to do that.
Monica, thank you so much for the work that you do. I know I mentioned we just dove into the mission and why the work that you do is so important, but I'd love to back up if you could share a little bit with us or for us about the Urban Bird Collective. What drew you to this sort of passionate work? I know it was sort of throughout your Pride journey, but I kind of want to know a little bit more of you behind the Urban
Yeah.
Bird Collective.
So, I went to Headwaters Foundation for Justice, and that's where I actually became a birder. And once I became a birder, I was just hooked. So all I could think about was the birds. I felt fortunate that I was in a position where I had lot of flexibility in my job. I could afford nice binoculars, and I also became a photographer during that time. One of the things that when I think about, interweaving just issue areas, the environment is really, really important to me. And so when I became a birder, I thought, well, I'm going to use birding as a way to talk about the environment, not to talk about gloom and doom, but it's like, you love the birds, let's protect the environment. And so I started sharing a bird of the day. It's been over 15 years. I post a new bird that I've taken. I've never shown it, and it's been in that year. So I've taken the photo in that year. And I usually try to capture about 200 Minnesota species a year. And that's where I kept hearing from people. My Facebook friends would say, I don't feel those places that you're talking about are amazing, but I don't feel welcomed and included out there. Like, can I join you? And I'm like, well, of course. And so that's where, I kept hearing from another friend of mine, like, you need to do something. Like, we need to get people out. And so that's where UBC came in. And yeah, I just once I was just so immersed. I decided that even though I loved my headwaters job, that I needed to give that to somebody else. I needed somebody else to have that position, and I was going to go birding. And I thought, well, I'm going to go birding and photography. It's going to pay the bills. It didn't, but I was able to do some, get some contracts, and really started doing more consulting. It just gave me time to be with the birds and explore my photography. And just as I was about to start UBC, I actually got pulled into another organization that I was volunteering for. It's called Voices for Racial Justice. And I was on the board, and they said they needed a new ED. And they said, "You're not doing anything. You should be the ED." And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm going to go birding. Um, but what was really important was the staff came to me and said, "We want to try a new way of leadership, a shared leadership. And we need you to do the finance and accounting." And so, this was 6 years ago, right when I was starting UBC. And I said, you know what? This is really important work. I wanted to give two young women of color the opportunity to be in leadership. And so I said, yes. And I said, I'll give you 5 years. I'll give you 5 years to do this. And so this was right before the murder of George Floyd. It was COVID. It was really important work. And so I did that alongside of UBC. And that's just how I live my life, very fast. And continued to grow UBC. We were doing the right thing, had amazing volunteers. And it wasn't until January of this year that I was able to be done with Voices for Racial Justice. And I left them in a really great place. And now I'm full time with the Urban Bird Collective, and just being able to put my energy into this organization.
And how has it been the past year, sort of diving in or maybe diving back in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I am trying to, like, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have all this time. And there's just so many people want to partner with UBC. We do about 70 events a year, but we want to do 80 or 90. Um, and we want to build partnerships, and partnerships take time. And I'm working with volunteers, and that takes time. So trying to grow the organization in a thoughtful, sustainable way is really, really important. And I just, I want to continue to do it right, and I want to be in a place where when I hand it off to the next, ED or EDs, that they are able to sustain it in a way that maintains our vision and our mission.
Do you have a sort of like timeline or idea in mind for when that might be?
What I'm hoping is that we're going to do strategic planning this year. So we'll do it at the end of the year. And my goal is to build into that strategic planning the thought of a transition. So that's I'm going to say 5 years. We'll see. It could be sooner. I am a person that wants to share power with, and it's not even power. It's like just I want to give others opportunities to be in this and to help grow it and shape it in, other ways. So I think I do a little bit of that now with just even our leaders who are helping to shape our programming and to be a big part of this.
I mean, I think that from everything that you've told me about the Urban Bird Collective, and I think just getting to know you as a leader, it sounds like that's something that might be happening naturally for you too. Like just and it sounds like you have a loyal group of people who really cherish and trust your leadership. So that's that's amazing. You've built something so beautiful.
Okay. I feel it. I do feel it.
Mm. It has been so lovely to get to know you. I feel like I had so many more questions about the important work that you've done. But I know a lot of my viewers and listeners are members of the LGBTQIA plus community. And surprisingly enough, you are actually the first LGBTQIA besides myself that I've had on this podcast. So I think speaking to that, my cat. Ouch. Speaking to that like audience and that group of people, I'm curious if there's anything that you could say, or if there's anything that you wish you heard, as someone who identifies as lesbian. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I grew up in an era where we weren't supposed to be out. So coming out it felt more like an activist. And throughout the times, we've got marriage equality and various things. And, we see people on TV and care, and it's part of life. But I feel like we've gone backwards. I feel like the era that we're in, that our communities are being targeted, and so it feels like again an act of resistance that we have to be continue to say that we're here, that we're not going away, and that we deserve to be safe and welcomed and included. And yeah, it's just really, really important. Um, when this all came down and we were hearing about all the changes that were happening and that nonprofits were being, targeted, if they were being inclusive, if they had, were working on LGBT rights, and and we had to question ourselves. We're like, okay, so are we going to be targeted? And what my leaders said is, if we do anything to change our name or take anything out of who so people can find us, I don't want to be a part of that. And we're like, no, we're not going to. We're going to be here. And whether we get funded or not, we will continue this work. Um, yeah, it's really important.
I think that's true leadership, even in spite of all of the pressure and external telling us not to be who we are. It's like choosing the radical thing to say, no, we're here and we're not going anywhere. I think that's inspiring.
Yeah, it shouldn't have to be, but here we are.
But
Yes.
it is. Yeah. Well, thank you, Monica, so much for the work that you do, not just with the Urban Bird Collective, but for showing up and taking up space and for continuing to inspire people like me who maybe have struggled with embracing their full identity. Um, I look to people like you, and it's really empowering. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, It's been so lovely to get to know you, and I'm hopeful that my audience will get some more exposure to you and your story in the future. But before we head out, if there's anything you'd love to share with the community about where they might be able to find you, and any exciting events maybe you have coming up that you want to highlight.
Yeah. You can find us on the web at Urban Bird Collective. We're on Facebook, so we're also the Urban Bird Collective, Instagram. If you're in the Twin Cities, join our newsletter. One of the things that we collect is we collect information on folks. We ask their, age or other demographics, just so that we can, center folks, if we have an LGBT event or a BIPOC event, we know then we can send it out to the various lists. I think one of the other things I forgot to mention is, especially in birding, um, young people don't see themselves in some of the more traditional groups, birding groups. And that's another thing that's very different about the Urban Bird Collective is we skew very young. My leaders, which I love, are young, and I learned so much from them. So again, check us out. If you're in the Twin Cities, we do about 70 events where we bird year round, even in the cold winter of Minnesota. And we also do kayaking and birding and biking and birding. And we just want to be outside.
That sounds so awesome. And there's so many opportunities, it sounds like, with you said 70 to 80 events
Yeah.
throughout. Like, you can find a way to love birds in any format, it sounds like. So
Yes.
that's pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you for you. Thank you for the Urban Bird Collective. Thank you for speaking on this podcast with me today and all that you do.